building full stack Jamstack applications with RedwoodJS. My name is Anthony Campolo, and if you want to find me online, my general handle is AJCWebDev. So that would be on Twitter or Dev2 or GitHub. Now, Redwood is what we call a full stack serverless framework for the Jamstack. And there's a lot of kind of like buzzwords here. And the kind of simpler definition that I like to use is that Redwood is a program for generating web apps. The idea being that it's for interactive data type manipulation applications that can be built really quickly. And it was created by Tom Preston-Werner and Peter Pistorius. They originally were working together on Chatterbug, which is a language learning platform. And they were using GraphQL and React and just struggling with kind of figuring out how to create an application in this way. And this framework has kind of emerged out of conversations between them of what type of architecture they're looking for. And they brought on Rob Cameron. He's helped out with the tutorial and with lots of other things in the framework. He's also doing repeater.dev. And then David Price is the general community manager for the project. And this was the original core 4, but now there's actually a larger expanded team. The core team is now these 12 people. So the project is growing. There's a lot of people who are involved and who are really passionate about it. This is the kind of big picture view of what Redwood is. The really important stuff is on the left where it says Redwood Codebase, and you have a front end and a back end. So your project is one what you call a mono repo with 2 main folders in it, a web folder and an API folder. So let's just look at the web folder first. If you've ever used Create React App or Gatsby or Next, it's a similar setup with pages and layouts. And there's an index.js and index.html to load in your kind of single page application. The pages is the kind of main way that you're going to organize your project is you're going to have pages. And with each of these, there's going to be a command written underneath. So the command is what generates this page that we see here. Yarn Redwood, that's what the RW stands for, is what all the commands start with. And then G is short for generate. We're going to see a lot of different generate commands that generate different things, this being an example of a page that we generate. We also can generate layouts. A layout would be like if you had a navigation bar that you wanted to persist as you go from page to page, so it's easy to navigate. Or if you want a footer with like your copyright at the bottom, that's the idea. And a cell, this is kind of a newer idea that Redwood has introduced. It's based around your data fetching. So we're using a lot of GraphQL here. And in the top right, we're writing a GraphQL query. And that query is for our posts and specifically for the ID of each of our posts. And we write that query. And then there's the 4 different states that our data can be in. It can either be loading if we're waiting to receive the data, empty if there is no data, failure if there was some sort of error along the way, and then success, where you get the posts and then you can do whatever you want with it. That was the front end. Now the back end is where we're going to have Prisma. Prisma is kind of like an ORM or a query builder. It's a way for us to easily talk to our database and do a lot of the SQL stuff for us. And then we also have a functions folder for serverless functions, and we have a GraphQL folder for our basically like SDL. So we're going to create a whole backend that can speak GraphQL. This is what defines first our database of being SQLite, and it's going to set it to an environment variable of database underscore URL. And then it generates a Prisma client, and then it creates models. So we have a post model here, which is just like a blog post, and it has a title and a body. And then it also has an ID. Each one will be given an ID automatically, and it'll just go up starting at 1. And then it sets the current time to create it at. If you've never used GraphQL before, then some of Redwood might be a little foreign, but it's a good way to actually get introduced to some of the ideas of GraphQL, the schema definition language being one of the biggest ones. This is our schema. So just like we defined the post earlier, we are also defining the post here with the ID, title, body, and created at. And then we're defining our query as well. So our query is for posts, and it returns an array of each individual post that we have. And then you could also query for just a single post by giving the ID of that post. On the right, that's then for our mutations. Not only can you query for data with GraphQL, you can also create, update, or delete things as well. So it's can do all the kind of CRUD capabilities through GraphQL. Now, our services, this is how the kind of backend resolvers are being written and are talking to Prisma. So we're importing DB, which is the Prisma client, and then the db.post.findMany, that's to do the Prisma command to get all the posts, or .find1. And then same for the right, your create, update, and delete. And then that's where we import the Prisma client. This is what kind of wires up all of your backend into one GraphQL handler. So most of this stuff in the backend, you don't really have to worry about. It all gets generated for you. You don't write any of this code, and I'm just showing it to you to kind of get context. Most of what we'll be writing will be more so in the front end, and then the generators kind of create a lot of things for us. Cool. So that is the slides. And now let's take a look at project. So first off, let me hide some stuff on my screen. There we go. Okay. All I've done so far is created this project. So I ran this command yarn create redwood-app and then period / and that's the name of the project. It creates our project, gives you some nice little info about community and where you can get some resources. And this is our project here. So let's go ahead and get our development server started. So we're going to do yarn redwood dev. And our development server is going to start on localhost 8910. And this will be already set up to watch our project. So as we make changes, it will automatically update itself. First, we're going to get just the splash page kind of saying, hello, this is Redwood. And then we'll run a command to create our first home page. All right, so there we go. Welcome to RedwoodJS. And now that we got this going, let's also go ahead and get a Git repository set up, because what we're going to do is we're going to end up deploying this. So this will initialize our Git repository, add everything, and then commit everything. And we're also going to create a repository over here, which will be our w-js-monthly. And this is just going to be a blank repository that we're going to then push our project up into. So we're going to set the remote. And then push to origin. And if we go back here now and refresh, we will see our project. So this is just a blank Redwood project that we've generated. Cool. Now let's actually start building some stuff. So the first command we're going to do is yarn redwood generate page, and then we're going to generate a home page at our home route, which is the /. And then it's going to get rid of this / page here and automatically update it with our first home page. And this was created in our web folder, src pages and home page. So if we make a change and we save, then we will see the change on the right. Cool. Let's generate another page. Yarn redwood generate page about. And this time, we don't need to even specify the route like we did with the / because we want it to be set to the about route and also the about page. You'll also notice that we're creating a couple other files here. Each one comes with a .stories for storybook and a .test for just testing. So this is now our about page. If we go now to /about, we have our about page. And we want to create a layout now that's going to wrap both of our pages and allow us to navigate in between. So we now are doing yarn redwood generate layout, and we're generating a blog layout. It will not be in pages, it'll be in layouts under blog layout. And this layout is simply going to have links to home and links to about. Yep, cool. And then once you do that, you have to actually bring the blog layout into your pages. So let's go back to our home page. And we're importing the blog layout. And we are wrapping it, or we're importing it and then wrapping our content with it. So we have blog layout and then closing / blog layout. And if we go now to about, we have to bring in the blog layout to our about page, and then we'll be able to navigate in between the two of them. So about page. Okay, so if we can click that, go to home, go to about, and there we are. So that's pretty cool. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create our post model in schema.prisma. We're going to delete this, and we're going to delete that. And our post model is what we looked at on the slides. Once we do that, we are going to do yarn redwood db save, and then create posts in quotes. And this is going to create a migration. A migration is the series of SQL steps that are going to be applied to the database to get our database set up with its tables for our blog posts. So this will create a migrations here that you can look at if you're interested. And to actually apply the migration, you do yarn redwood db up. This will get your database up and ready to go. And the yarn redwood generate scaffold command, this is going to be the command that's going to create essentially our entire blog interface that will allow us to create our posts and edit them and do all the things we want to do. So once this finishes, we will run the scaffold command. And let's go back to home here. And real quick, just to show what came out of this, it will give you exactly what was created. So it shows you the data model, and then it shows you the commands that are being run. It shows you where the migration is and all that stuff. So this is going to create a lot of stuff, and it's kind of too much to go into just in the span of this talk, but I highly recommend just kind of poking around in it. And it's a good way to kind of figure out how a project is structured. But what's nice is that you can just run the command and get it set up for you. Now what we do here is we're going to go to /posts, and we're going to have our blog posts interface right here. Now, when I was showing you the cells, there was the different states that your data could be in. Right now, you see how it says loading. So it's checking the database to see if we have any posts. And once it figures out whether we do or not, it'll say no posts. Do you want to create one? And yes. JS monthly. And then when we do that, we now have our post. And if we want to edit the post, we can edit it. And if we want to delete a post, we can also do that as well. It'll give you a little warning asking if you really want to delete the post. Let's get one more post up here. And now what we want to do is we want to create a cell that's going to allow us to render all of our blog posts onto our home page. And this is now going to go into the components folder and blog post cell, blog post cell. Now, what we want to search for is not blog posts, but posts, because that's what our schema was set to. So if we do that, posts and posts. Now, right now, we're not going to see anything because much like the blog layout, once you've created it, you have to actually import it into the page you want to see it in. So we're going to import this into our home page, which will be like so. So now we have our blog layout, but we have blog post cell. And we'll get that right there. Okay. So what we're seeing now is we're only seeing the ID, and we're being given the type of the thing we're getting, which is a post. Now, the reason for this is in our blog cell, right now we're only asking for the ID. We also want the title and the body and the created at. Now we'll be able to see everything. But if we really want to style it, make it look a little nicer, we can do that here in Success. This is taking the ID, setting it to the key, creating a title in H2, putting the body in a paragraph, and then creating a little div for the time created. All right, there is our blog. Now, what we really want to do, though, is we want to put this blog on the internet. This is going to set up our deploy for Netlify. There's also a similar command you can use for Vercel. And this is really nice because it gives you your build steps automatically in netlify.toml. While that is going, there's only one other piece of configuration you have to do, and you have to change your database from SQLite to Postgres. And that's all you got to do. So this was the netlify.toml that was created. It has a build command, and it sets up our database. It has a folder to publish your assets and redirects. So now that is all set up, you want to not forget to actually push all this stuff. So we're going to commit, and we're going to push that up to the repo that we created at the beginning. We're going to use Netlify to deploy the front end and Heroku for the Postgres database. And all this is on the free tier, which is pretty nice. So we're going to go new site, select GitHub, type in your repo, and select the repo, and it will automatically include the build command because you had that netlify.toml. That'll take a little while to deploy. So while that's going on, let me also turn this off. Okay. Create new app. We'll call it RedwoodJS monthly DB. Create that app. Once you have created the app, gotta re-authenticate. Once you have created the app, you're going to go to resources and then just enter Postgres for add-ons. Postgres. There's a lot of different options. You just can pick the hobby dev free and submit order form. Now to actually connect the two, we're going to have environment variables. So these are the keys that you want to guard very carefully. So after I do these presentations, I like tear down these projects. But basically, it generated this database URL environment variable with this Postgres URL. And you go to your site settings and you go to build and deploy. Scroll down and you will see environment and environment variables. You type in the name database underscore URL. And then there's one other thing that you want to make sure you don't forget to do, which is set the connection pool. What this is you want to make sure that your app isn't connecting to your database multiple times is basically what this is. And so we're going to set the connection limit to 1. And then you stick that right on the end here. And then we're going to save. So that's set our environment variable. Let's see if this is still deploying. All right, that is still going. Are there any questions for me while this is building out?
Yeah, I have a couple, Anthony.
Cool. Hit me with them.
So I suppose quite a couple of quite broad questions. Yeah, why this project over and above tools or collections of tools like Next.js and Gatsby and things that already exist? I mean, I can see it's got a few other nice to haves in there, but is there like a single selling point that you would tell someone?
I would say it's giving you the full stack experience, because with something like Gatsby or Next.js, they're really incredible tools and you can create really sophisticated client sides with them. But for Redwood, it's giving you conventions to already have a way to speak to your database and have it be coherent throughout your whole project. So I think a lot of people who have tried to learn React have struggled with the general lack of structure that comes with React, because it's very flexible and it's very minimal, and it's mostly just taking like the view layer. So I see these different frameworks as each building out like more and more abstractions on top. So I think if you want to go beyond just the type of like static content you create with Gatsby, or if you want to go beyond to the type of like server stuff, you can do it Next, because Next still doesn't really have any opinions about the database. That's, even though people say it has like a backend that's like quote unquote full stack, it has a server side because it's like universal rendering, but it doesn't really have like a database opinion. Whereas with Redwood, you get Prisma, which is like a whole ORM that's like active record. So that's kind of the difference how I see it. So right now our site is live, but we're gonna have to do this again. So I will take another question real quick. So right now this will be broken because we have to actually re-trigger the builds to get the environment variables to run. So we're gonna do that again. And you want to wait for it to finish the first time because then it has the cache. So yeah. Do you have other questions?
I saw that it's a lot of the files that you were demonstrating were JS. Does it support TS? Does it support TypeScript?
Yeah, it's getting to the point where almost the entire framework has been converted over to TypeScript. It's sort of been a gradual process because it was originally written in JavaScript, and then there was a lot of people wanted both like kind of types. They wanted to be able to write in types, and they wanted like kind of types if they're contributing. So it's been basically kind of like piecemeal, breaking pieces off and making them TypeScript compatible. So that's work is ongoing, but we're getting pretty close. So if you're into TypeScript, then like we're almost across the finish line there in terms of being like fully TypeScript compatible. But right now you can like write TypeScript and it'll work, you know.
Does it support incremental builds?
Yes, that's a good question. Right now it's does not, because the kind of, when it comes to like the incremental build stuff, it's a question of whether it needs to be in the framework or it needs to be in the provider level, and how much integration there is between the frameworks and the providers in terms of like who's doing the build. So like for Gatsby, they built their own kind of cloud to do their own incremental builds. So right now, we're not doing any sort of like incremental build process, but that and things like pre-rendering, all that kind of stuff is being worked on for when we get to V1. So we're aiming for V1 in the first quarter, and that's where we're going to kind of like iron out those last kind of bits. But right now it's just kind of like stabilizing the technology, getting all the pieces to fit together. But in terms of like just getting you a project up and running really fast, it's really good. There's some people who are actually combining it with like a Next.js front end. So it's really interesting because they use like the Redwood API and then attach Next.js front end or like a Gatsby front end. So there's like these different kind of hybrid solutions that are also being created. And this looks like it's good to go. Now, if we check out our deploy, if we go to /posts, we will be able to, so now it says empty instead of giving us that error. And if we go back to our homepage, there is your blog.